God'll get you for that one.
Maude is owned by Shout Factory.
God'll Get You for That, Walter, is produced for entertainment purposes only.
Sponsored in part by Findley's Friendly Appliances.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of God'll Get You for That, Walter.
And God does get Walter.
He does.
He
really
get Walter
does.
This
He does
time.
get Walter.
He really sticks it to him. For $5,000.
$5,000.
But we'll get to
that.
We'll
in a
get to that
moment.
figure.
I am Tom Catt, and I am joined, as always, by my fabulous co-host.
Are you absolutely sure you're Tom Catt?
Yes.
Okay.
At least today.
Who am I again?
Honey Homeperm.
Thank you. No, that's Toni with an I.
Toni with an I.
Homeperm.
Welcome to God'll Get You for That, Walter, a podcast where we discuss the 1970s hit sitcom, Maude. And today we're going over Season 3, Episode... 21. I didn't write the 21. It's called Walter Gets Religion, and it originally aired March 3rd, 1975. Directed by Hal Cooper. Mm-hmm. What happened?
I just wanted to point out, this is our Episode 69.
Oh, Jesus Christ almighty. Son of a bitch. Thank you.
Couldn't let that one pass. I'm
no,
sorry.
No, it's appropriate that the religion episode is episode 69. Of course.
How apropos.
How appropriate indeed.
Oh, my.
Directed by Hal Cooper, written by Charlie Hawk, and, of course, Norman Lear. It guest stars Graham Jarvis as Reverend Williamson.
What? Now, I know I've seen him in a million things.
I don't.
I mean, he must have been like All in the Family. I'm sure.
Of course.
All
I mean, it was the same thing in the 80s, how just a lot of actors jumped from sitcom to sitcom wherever they could be placed.
He was like one of those sort of supporting character actors that he was just in like so many shows. And
yeah.
One of those people you when you see him, you're like, oh, I recognize him
from
but
somewhere.
I don't remember exactly from what.
Do
we know
Graham
what?
Jarvis, Canadian character actor.
Oh.
He died in 2003.
Okay.
The Dirty Dozen, Draw, A Cry for Help, Mary Hartman,
Mary Hartman. I think he was, wasn't he, I think he was Loretta's husband. No, not Loretta's husband.
You would know better than I would.
I'm trying to remember. Whose husband? I think it was Mary Hartman's husband.
Hold on. Graham Jarvis, A New Leaf, Misery, What's Up, Doc. He was the bailiff in What's Up, Doc.
Oh, yes, the bailiff. That's right. So many things he did.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
He did, yes.
Mr. Mom, he was Howard Humphreys.
Mm-hmm. So many things that he did.
Jag, Home Improvement, one episode. One episode, The Drew Carey Show. Just an everyman.
Just almost every sitcom you can imagine. He was in an episode. Yeah.
Cobra, NYPD
was that
Blue,
X-Files?
X-Files, the X-Files.
Oh, my goodness.
Cobra, La Law, In the Heat of the Night. Coach, Tales from the Crypt.
Knots Landing.
Get a
Star
Life.
Trek The Next Generation. I mean.
Everywhere.
So many. Murphy Brown.
A Cry for Help, The Tracy Thurman Story, Charles in Charge, Murder, She Wrote, Married with Children.
Married with Children.
Everywhere. Mama's Family.
Oh, yeah,
just everything. Truly everything.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to be. I'd like to be an actor that's in everything.
I would like you to be that, too.
I know.
Can you go now?
I'm running. I'm on my way. I'm on my way. Right. And Brian Morrison returns as Philip.
Sure.
And, it's hysterical. He really shoots up.
Yes.
From, where we last saw him to now.
He really had a growth spurt.
And I think by, season 5, he looks like a teenager. Mm-hmm. I want to say an early 20s something.
They didn't replace him?
They did. They replaced him in season 6.
Oh, in season 6.
In season 6, we got a new Philip.
Oh, okay.
So, the episode opens with Maude and Walter and
in church
and Dr. Harmon and Vivian in church. Mm-hmm. And, it's a congregation. It's a sermon. The priest is going on and on about, everything that priests usually generally do. Well, what did you think of the episode first and foremost?
Oh, very funny.
I enjoyed it too. I definitely enjoyed it. Top 20. Definitely top 20.
And of course, Maude is asleep.
Maude is sleeping. She is struggling to remain
stay
awake.
Right. And I honestly, I cannot blame her.
I can't blame her either.
I can't blame her.
Although I will say this, and this is so tragic and so terrible. So whenever me and my family went to church, there was a priest who had this incredibly thick foreign accent. And every time we would go to church, my father would impersonate the priest to the point where me and my family could not keep it together.
Oh, Lord.
And I remember one time my mother said, we have to get out of here. And we did. We left. And I think that was one of the last times that that me and my family ever went to that church again.
Oh, Jesus.
But
hear our prayers.
please watch over us in this hour of need. Amen. So, yes. So Maude is asleep, and
She's struggling to stay awake, and then she's out.
Then she's out cold, snoring.
And the minister, he's calling for them to have a silent moment of prayer.
A silent moment of prayer.
And
then he says, "Let us pray." And then I think Walter either nudges her, and she just shoots. I'm awake.
I'm awake. It's like the only time it would have been permissible for her to be,
asleep. And she's not.
That's when she wakes up.
So at that point,
then they start the collection.
They start the collection, which is quite hilarious.
Yes.
And the priest says, "Oh, the social center's opening. We have these new centers opening.
All for the social center.
All for the social centers."
And he's saying you could give like
$100, $20, or $5.
And Maude is putting in a bill.
Maude puts in a bill.
And Arthur's putting in a bill.
Arthur doesn't put in a bill.
No. Walter puts in a bill.
Walter puts in a bill. Maude puts in a bill. Vivian puts in a bill.
And then it comes to Arthur.
And Arthur tosses in a
clink.
tosses in a quarter. And the priest says,
a quarter.
Or a quarter.
Yeah.
Sounds a lot like drag queens, doesn't it? We accept your 10s, your 5s, your quarters, your pennies, your EBT cards.
I don't take change. No, not taking change.
You are the change.
If anyone tried to give me change,
I'd rain on Holy Hera.
Humiliate that person.
On Holy Hera, I would rain upon them.
And I would not want to be that person.
No,
I would not want to be that person. So.
As a matter of fact, one of my girlfriends hit me up last night. She was supposed to come with her cousin, and they were the two that were missing. But it was just one of those things where I'm like, there's always next time. There's always next time. So there's a big laugh after Walter tosses in a quarter. And as a matter of fact, it gets even funnier because Maude starts laughing.
Yeah.
And she's cackling and carrying on. And then as soon as the pastor starts speaking again, she passes out.
Falling asleep. Yes.
And I think at that point...
And the minister, he said they were going to... The next homily or something was going to be
a hymnal.
Saint Bernard.
Yes.
The dog and
the human. And the human. That was funny. So at that point, they start singing. They all get up. Yeah. And before anything happens, before any of the singing happens, Maude lets out this humongous yawn.
Yes.
And then they start singing, I think it was 123 of the hymnal 421.
Yes.
And, so it cuts to...
Back to the house.
Maude and Walter come in, and Maude is one step ahead of Walter, saying, "Never have I ever been so embarrassed in my entire life."
And Walter is like,
"That's not funny.
Stop repeating me."
And then Maude says, "I'm not repeating you, Walter. I'm one step ahead. That is not funny, Walter. That is not funny, Maude." And of course, Walter then says, "That's not funny, Maude."
Yes.
So then we have this interesting conversation where Maude says that the last time she was that bored, Mike Douglas had Miss Andy Granatelli on. And that was the last time she was that bored.
Yes. I don't know who she is.
Neither do. Well, you know what? Let's educate ourselves.
I know who Mike Douglas.
We all know who Mike Douglas is.
I mean, back in that era, he had like a daytime variety show. That was so big. The daytime variety.
I think one of my favorite episodes was the Mike Douglas show where Gene Simmons was a guest star, and Toady Fields was on with him. And if I remember correctly, Gene Simmons is trying to really intimidate the audience by being like a vampire and like this. And Toady is just not impressed. She's rolling her eyes and saying everything, and she looks at the Gene Simmons lifts up Toadie's arms, and she has on this beautiful caftan-y situation, and he goes, "Oh, Toadie, your bat formation is really cute." And she says something to the effect of, "Wouldn't it be funny if under that you were just a nice Jewish boy?"
Because he was.
Because he was a nice Jewish boy,
yeah.
and his mother made all of their costumes.
Oh.
His mother made all of the Kiss costumes, and I think Gene Simmons says, "Oh, you should only know," and Toadie comes back saying, "I do know, honey. You can't hide the hook." Talking about his nose. It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube.
Lord.
It is so funny.
Lord, that is funny.
That tickled me.
A funny thing about Mike Douglas,
Yeah.
is he had that daytime variety show that had been on for years,
Yeah.
and then they unceremoniously dumped him for John Davidson. Yes, and it was this big, big
What was
scandal.
it? What was the reason behind it? Did
They just decided they wanted somebody younger, and they dumped Mike Douglas, and they just put on John Davidson in his place.
That's a shame.
And then John Davidson had the show for
a while,
quite a while. But,
now we need to find out who Andy Granatelli is.
Andy Granatelli. Who is...
Oh, Miss Andy Granatelli, not Andy Granatelli.
Miss-
Because we've had
I thought
this
it was
conversation
Mrs.
before. Mrs. Andy Granatelli.
Mrs. Andy Granatelli.
Mrs. Andy Granatelli.
Who is Mrs. Andy Granatelli?
I guess it was the woman who was married to Andy Granatelli.
And it was
And Andy Granatelli was we've had this conversation before with the
race,
STP stickers.
Yes, he was
the founder or CEO. Is Andy Granatelli still alive? No. He died in 2013. Okay. Was Andy Granatelli, besides his son Vince, survivors include his wife Dolly. So Dolly Granatelli.
Okay.
So let's find out what good she did. Not Mrs. Andy Griffith.
Mrs. Andy Griffith.
Dolly Granatelli.
Dolly Granatelli.
Granatelli did National Museum of American History. Dolly's Crisp Toffee Bars. So apparently she was just, I guess, a Susie Homemaker that maybe sang. Maybe. Andy Granatelli, flamboyant racing figure, dies at 90. That was in 2013. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think she was just a Susie Homemaker type.
Okay. No wonder Maude
was bored.
Okay, so makes sense.
That does.
All right, so
then we have this interesting conversation about socks.
Oh yes.
Because somehow it comes up that Walter takes off his socks with his other foot.
He tries to take off the sock with the other foot. I've done that.
I've done that too. No, yeah.
Also, Maude had said, if God had wanted them to go to church, why would he have made
the Sunday New York Times 300 pages
long?
Yeah.
And she starts.
And it's true that we really do have this interesting conversation about organized religion in this episode. And I'm always fascinated about people's opinions about religion, because that's one thing that you're always told when you're growing up. You never talk to your best friends or your friends about politics or religion, because then you'll
Yeah.
But in today's day and age, I feel like talking about politics and religion is the backbone of any friendship.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Because
it's so polarizing.
Oh, so polarizing these days. When years ago it was just, I'm Jewish, or I'm agnostic, or I'm atheist, or I'm this, or I'm that. Nowadays it's just become so over the top, and religion is camp. Mm-hmm. Religion, I feel, is camp.
Yeah.
Because it's just so over the top and so ludicrous. And, I look at people like Joel Osteen, who have made millions. Billions being an evangelical.
Disgusting.
Literally, in fact. And it's like, where just...
Yeah, his thing is like, oh, well, Jesus wants me to have all this money.
No, he doesn't.
It's like, no. He really doesn't, Joel, but...
If the Son of God had it his way, all of that money would be circulated back into the Americas.
Pretty much. But Joel, of course, he's talking about Caucasian Jesus. He's not talking about actual Middle Eastern Jesus. So let's be clear about that. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong.
Am I wrong?
You're not wrong at all. He's talking about
Caucasian.
Jesus?
He's talking about the white Republican Jesus.
He is talking about white Republican Jesus. He is. That's exactly the Jesus that he's talking about.
That's the one he's talking about.
So, yes. And, there will be much more discussion about religion over the course of this episode because it's just it's in the title. Walter gets religion.
Walter gets religion. Give me that old time religion.
Give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion.
Don't stop. We're gonna get copyright. I don't know. Maybe there's no copyright.
Maybe there's no copyright on that.
Hopefully.
Well, I mean, anything over 100 years old
I guess maybe it'd be copyrighted by white Republican Jesus.
Well, we don't want that.
We certainly don't.
We don't want that.
We don't want that.
No.
All right.
Heaven preserve.
All right. So.
One sock with your foot. Try it with over the knees. And Maude says just try it with pantyhose.
Right,
I would never try it with pantyhose.
Right. Yeah. That's one of his personal joys. That's what it was.
Yes.
That was one of his personal joys.
I mean, it was the 70s. There was
and Walter, he's like, how did you know? He's like, you were
sleeping. I was pretending.
He was pretending. And now Maude's getting suspicious. She's like, you started going to church 6 weeks ago.
Yep.
And Walter is like telling her, the family that prays together
stays together. And we finally come to Maude saying, isn't it amazing how at any moment you can reach into your golden bag of wisdom and pull out one clinker after another?
Right. And she tells me that, her and her first husband, they used to pray together.
They used to pray together all the time.
Yes.
And Walter asks, what for? And Maude says, we prayed for a divorce. Which, I mean, that's the one continuity error that I find with Maude. It's trying to figure out the chronological order of her husbands.
Which ones she divorced and which died?
She divorced Chester.
Right.
Bruce died, and she divorced Albert. But I don't know if Albert was her first husband or not, or if Albert was her second husband. But I think, I'd have to do my research. But I think, I'm pretty sure it went...
These are questions for quantum physicists at this point, I think.
I'm pretty sure
it's like trying to unwrap the spaghetti logic of the Golden Girls.
Oh my God, the Golden Girls universe.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it went Bruce, who died, Chester, who got a divorce, and Albert, whom she divorced. And then there's Walter. But then her and Walter get a divorce. But then they don't. They decide not to get a divorce.
Right.
But we'll get to that later.
At some point, yes.
So I think at
Walter
that point,
wants to know what does she have against church?
And she says, "Well, when I was younger, I was kicked out of the church choir at 12."
Right.
And Walter asks, "For what?" And she says, "Singing." And then Mrs. Naugatuck enters.
She comes in and she's la-la-lying.
Yeah, she's singing to herself. And
so she starts asking Maude,
was Mrs. Pearson wearing her new mink coat? Was Mrs. Morgan having her hair tinted? She said she was going to.
Right.
And, while Mrs. Naugatuck is asking these questions, Maude is just not.
She's like, no.
No, I don't remember. I didn't see. I didn't pay attention.
She asked about somebody.
Mr. Duddy and his new wife. And, Maude says, no, I didn't see. And, of course, Mrs. Naugatuck then says, well, a fat lot of good it does you to go to church. Which, I mean, okay. Now I need to think.
Tell us how you really feel.
I went to church. So I did catechism. I was confirmed. I was confirmed in the Catholic faith, all that fun stuff. Received First Holy Communion, so on and so forth. And when we lived in Brooklyn, the church was literally around the corner. We went to St. Dominic's. And literally, when I say it was right around the corner, we were able to walk to church every Sunday morning. And we went, I think, until we moved in 98. And then, when we came here, we did the same thing. We would go to church almost every Sunday. I mean, sometimes I think either just my father and my mother went, or we all went. Like, it didn't become as big of a thing as it was when we lived in Brooklyn. And I think it was right after I was confirmed. Like, right after I received confirmation, I was just like, well, I don't want to go. I have no head for it.
Right.
And, then I reached the age of reason. And now here we are. And you?
Fair.
What happened with you and your religion?
Oh, jeez. Well, my mother was Jehovah's Witness for a long time.
Yes, we've discussed that before.
Oh, God. It's horrendous.
As a matter of fact, so just potpourri at this point. We're recording in my studio in my house. We're not recording in Tony's house. And the first thing this person says as I open the door, Jehovah's Witness. Because, of course.
I tried to give you that copy of the Watchtower. You wouldn't take it. Trying to save you.
I would rather read Watchmen than Watchtower.
Me too. And
if for no other reason than for Dr. Manhattan.
And I did. Well, let me tell you, that Jehovah's Witness, they love white Jesus, too. All the Jesuses, he's always,
of course,
at least back when I had to go.
White Jesus.
It was white Jesus.
I forget who coined that little jingle. White Jesus.
Oh,
I think
never heard that before.
Maybe it was Key and Peele. Maybe. I love the two of them. They're hysterical. So, and it's true. That's what I have it written down here. Maude says, as Mrs. Nogatuk leaves, that's what church is, the National Enquirer with candles.
Yes. Yeah.
So then, Walter sits Maude down and says, remember Gary Cooper as Sergeant York?
Yes.
And Maude says, you're reaching into your golden bag again, Walter. And he says, no, Maude, listen to me. Do you remember Gary Cooper and Sergeant York?
Yeah, he was.
Yep.
Yeah, he was the biggest hero, but he was a real heller.
Yes, a real heller. Why do I have to? Oh my God.
I think he was a drinker. He was a smoker.
Yes.
All that thing. But then he found religion. Right.
Divine inspiration. That's what he found. He
He
found divine inspiration.
He found religion. And he changed.
And then I think Maude comes back saying, well, listen if you
want
want to go...
Listen, Sarge.
Listen, Sarge. If you want to go out and capture Germans, why don't you get a dozen knockwurst and a load of pumpernickel?
Right. Sounds awfully good.
It does sound delightful.
I can't eat knockwurst anymore.
My mother swears by knockwurst and liverwurst. Liverwurst sandwiches with mustard.
I love those.
Can't eat them.
Can't eat them anymore.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, well. Life goes on.
It does.
Yes.
Just not for your digestive system.
No. Okay.
So at that point, Maude says, look, I try and do right by myself. I do not need any organized religion. I obey the 10 Commandments, at least 9 of them. Yes. And Walter's like, well, what are you talking about? And, Maude, of course, says, that's for me to know and you to find out.
And she's like, it's not her fault that God gave her
dreams and Paul Newman. Which, I've seen pictures of Paul Newman in his youth, and good Lord, man. Yes. Yes. Good Lord. I felt the same way about Gene Kelly as I do about Paul Newman.
Could make you moist.
Quite literally, in fact.
Yes.
When I first saw Gene Kelly in... What movie was it that I saw? I think it probably was Singing in the Rain. I'm like, good gravy, is he attractive.
You know who else so handsome in his youth? Montgomery Clift.
Yes.
That man was...
Montgomery Clift.
He was too beautiful.
Gregory Peck was another one who was gorgeous. And not for anything. Cary Grant was gorgeous right up until his dying day.
And Rock Hudson in his heyday.
Was... I was scrolling through my memories on Facebook, and there was one older woman when I worked in retail, which I still do. But there was an older woman that came in. She had a beautiful, beautiful Spanish accent, and she looks me up and down, and she goes, "You remind me so much of Rock Hudson." And I look at her, and I was just like, "Oh my God, thank you so much." And then I was like, "Wait, really?" Of course, I had more hair on my head at the time. But I was heavier.
Older woman, you say?
Older.
So, could she have possibly had cataracts?
Good night, everybody. Welcome to God Will Get You for That, Walter, where every episode is the last episode. Thank you, Mom. Incidentally, you look fat.
Well, I went on TikTok when I'm doing my live. They're like, they call me when I'm like, starting the makeup.
When you start the makeup,
and the brows are glued down, and it's like you're not pretty.
Can I
you're not
tell
handsome.
you?
They call me Herman. They go Herman Munster.
Well, I see it though.
But if you see pictures of Fred Gwynn when he was young,
he was also very handsome.
Fred Gwynn when he was younger.
So
I'm like, whatever.
Age and treachery will befall all of us.
What was this you wanted to ask about?
Oh, no, that was it. You just said
Oh,
that I
that
looked like
was it?
Rock Hudson.
Oh. No, you were about to say something. You said, you're saying I have to ask. Isn't that what you said?
I did say that. Now I have to remember what
You
the fuck
can't
I wanted to
remember
ask you.
Now you don't remember what you wanted to ask. I was talking about TikTok.
Oh, yes. That was what I wanted to ask. The amount of people that comment that your brows look really weird.
Mm-hmm.
How do you respond to that? Like, it's just...
They on TikTok?
They eat that up.
I get more, like, responses and things about when I'm gluing down my brows.
Yeah.
Than anything. It's like, what are you using? What are you doing? What is happening? What is that purple stuff?
What's the purple stuff that you put on your eyes?
And then I get, why don't you just shave them off? I'm like, listen, I would look like a freaking alien if I shaved my eyebrows off. I'm not shaving my eyebrows off.
Honestly, I think Frank would divorce you if you ever shaved your eyebrows off.
I would divorce myself. I would tell myself, I'm sorry, but this is not working.
That's it.
Us.
It's not
not you.
It's not you. It's me.
And I would help myself pack my own bags.
Yeah.
But
I would.
People find that process fascinating.
Fascinating. They do, because I remember when we did that one live, I was reading the comments and all they were talking about were your eyebrows. And I'm like, oh my God, do these people not get out?
It's the funniest thing.
It really is.
It's so funny.
It hit me so out of the blue one day, and I was just reading those comments, and even when you were doing your Valentine's Day mug,
mm-hmm.
when you were doing your Valentine's Day face, I was reading those comments, and it was just like the eyebrows. What's going on with the eyebrows? Your eyebrows look so weird.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't get out much.
Yeah.
Welcome to the art of illusion.
It's funny though, the people who stick around for the whole thing, when I finally have new eyebrows on, they're like, oh, now I see.
And that's when the other shoe drops.
Yes, exactly.
That's when the other shoe drops.
All right,
so at that point,
mm-hmm.
Bert enters, and Bert knocks on the door, and Mrs. Nogatuk comes out saying, "Oh, that's Bert. We're going to church together. If that's you, Bert, come on in."
Hello.
So he comes in. And
there's something about sitting in the back row.
Yeah, Mrs. Nogatuk wants to leave so she can sit in the back row
mm-hmm.
because she wants to, I guess. Oh no! If they have to leave early, That's which me and my family have done, where we sat literally in the back. There was no sitting in the front for us,
right?
Because God forbid we laugh too loudly. We have to leave. Oh my goodness, so funny. And usually, I think we would leave right. If we were ever to go together, we would not stay. I think we would leave right as soon as the host was being offered.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as soon as they pulled out the host and the wine, it was like we skedaddled. Because everyone was just getting up, so it was just like, all right, it's easy. We can leave. We can get to breakfast early and avoid the rush.
My grandmother, she used to take me, when I was little, I used to stay with her. She would take me with her when she went to church.
Yeah.
And she would do, she went like regular and everything.
Clockwork.
Yes. But like, she also had to sit in the back because she wanted to be able to leave before the rush started to get out.
No, it's true.
She didn't like sitting next to anybody, sitting near anybody, because she didn't want to shake hands
during
with
the
anyone.
Peace Be With Yous.
Yes, because she's like, you don't know where they've been. You don't know if their hands are dirty.
Oh my God.
Yeah. My grandmother was extremely fastidious.
Clearly.
Extremely. She was like not shaking anybody. She's not shaking some stranger's hand.
I mean, that was how it was with me and my family. We would go, and before the Peace Be With You, we would sometimes shake the person's hand in front of us, but otherwise we were just shaking each other's hands and kissing each other on the cheek.
It's too bad they can't have church just a drive-through thing.
I'm surprised they haven't cornered a market on that. I'm sure the evangelicals are working on it.
You can get your communion at the drive-through window, and
Listen, if they can do wakes by the drive-through, they can do that by the drive-through.
Really.
So Bert.
So it turns out that Bert and Mrs. Nogatuk, they go to two different churches.
Yes,
because Bert is
Church of England,
and Mrs. Nogatuk is not. And that's, I actually stopped you, Mrs. Naugatuck, she makes this joke about how she's talking about how she's been to Italy.
She went to Rome.
She went to Rome, and someone pinched her right in the middle of the
Via
Veneto.
The Via Veneto.
Via Veneto. Well, she says Via Veneto, and I stopped you because in the show, the British show, Are You Being Served?
Yes.
They use the same joke. Mrs. Slocum is serving this woman who's buying pantyhose, and she buys she's like, Mrs. Slocum's like, why do you need 20 pairs of pantyhose? And she tells her, she said, I'm going to Rome on vacation, and the men there all pinch your bottom. And Mrs. Slocum was like, no, really? And the woman says to her, I've even been pinched in the middle of the Via Veneto. No, really? And then the woman leaves, and then Mrs. Slocum she goes back.
I have to ask, where do you watch?
Amazon.
Oh, you watch
Amazon
it on
Prime.
Amazon.
Yes. I think that's BritBox.
Yeah, that
think it's
wouldn't surprise me. I'm actually, speaking of British comedies, I'm very sad that Hulu is getting rid of Absolutely Fabulous.
Oh, did that?
Because I've been whatchamacalliting, I've been watching a lot more AbFab. Because I like, you go through these moments where it's like, I won't watch it, I'll save it for later, and then you need to watch it, and it becomes a hyperfixation.
I just love that show.
It's such a great
Hilarious.
show. It's such a great
so
show.
Yes.
But
I think they stole that.
They probably did.
Joke.
They probably did.
It's the exact same joke.
They've done throughout situational comedy history, they've been doing that for years. The Office was Ricky Gervais, and then it came over here and it became Steve Carell, and it was longer lasting in the American lexicon than it was over in Britain. And then also, what was the other one? Fawlty Towers. Fawlty Towers was Amanda's by the Sea.
Right.
And Amanda's by the Sea starred B. Arthur.
All in the Family, that was originally a British show.
That was originally a British show.
Sanford and Son was originally a British show.
Yep.
So, there's sort of a precedent for Norman Lear seeing these British shows and then Americanizing
The only one that wasn't Americanized, I think, was Maude. I think that was
right.
I think that was pretty original from.
But actually, Are You Being Served? Actually, they did make an American pilot version of it. Beans of Boston, it was called.
Okay.
And they basically just did a reworking of one of the best Are You Being Served episodes. It was called German Week. It was like for 1 week they're selling like German goods. And they just, but you can see it, actually watch it on YouTube.
On YouTube. They did that with AbFab too. They tried to bring it with
Sybil Shepherd.
Not Sybil Shepherd. They did it with, for Pete's sake. They did it with, no, they did it with, and she was Agatha Harkness in WandaVision, Catherine Hahn, and Kirsten Johnson.
Oh.
Yep.
Oh.
They tried to bring AbFab to the States with Kirsten Johnston as Patsy and Catherine Hahn as Adina.
Really?
Yep. And you could watch the pilot episode, I think, on YouTube, and it just does not translate well.
Yeah. Well, Sybil Shepherd had a sitcom in the 90s.
Yeah.
And Christine Baranski was her best friend, and they sort of pulled a little from there. Yeah,
Absolutely Fabulous. No, that makes sense.
Christine Baranski, her character in that was very Patsy.
Over the top and very Patsy.
Very Patsy, yes. But yeah, some things just don't translate.
Some things just don't translate.
know,
I remember they also didn't Patsy and Eddie guest star in an episode of Roseanne?
Yes.
I vaguely remember that.
But that was the season that was it was Roseanne was just having a dream.
Of course she was.
That was that was the episode where she was just having a dream. So anywho
beans. Back on the farm.
So meanwhile, back at the ranch.
So I think, so after that joke,
Bert brings up that
Henry VIII.
Yeah, he only created the Church of England so we could get divorced.
Yeah, so we can get a legal
Maude,
divorce.
of course, is that's my kind of church.
Yep, because of course Maude would say that's her kind of church.
And Mrs. Naugatuck, she's pushing Bert to get out. She's saying he's windier than her minister.
Yes.
So,
So I think at that point they come to the conversation about going to the dedication. Because that's so.
Good night.
Thank you. So the overarching message of this episode is Maude doesn't want to go to the dedication because she just doesn't find religion to be all that exhilarating, which can't blame her.
She doesn't find organized religion to be a necessary
part of her life.
Then Arthur and Vivian come in because Arthur is telling Walter that, they
need to get ready to go play golf.
They have to go play golf. It's time to tee off.
And I think it was they were going to go to golf and then go to the dedication. I could not imagine going out to play a sport, even though it is golf.
It's only golf.
But going out to play golf, then coming home, showering, getting dressed, and going to a dedication.
It's no different than going to the gig.
I mean, but even after the gig, what do? We putz around and just bullshit.
But we've done multiple gigs in a day.
True. I mean, I've only done that once.
Only once.
I've only done that once. I haven't earned my stripes yet.
Your stripes.
But I'll tell you what, though, going to a convention and doing a whole day, going to a con, schmoozing, it's exhausting.
It is.
So
Vivian, she's like, she doesn't understand why Arthur wants to go.
Because he
complains
about everything. He doesn't enjoy, and he just says,
yeah,
well, it's my only chance I get to have any real fun.
Yeah.
Like, I live with that. I live with that because all they do is complain. All they do is complain. God forgive me, that is all my family does is complain. About anything, and everything, they will complain about it.
There.
So, I think Walter goes upstairs to get ready, and, Maude asks if they want a cup of coffee. So, Vivian, pokes fun, saying, you want to awaken the sleeping Madonna? Obviously prodding at Maude for sleeping in church.
Yeah.
And, she already said, I already got, lashed at by St. Finley of Assisi. Do you know when I was in catechism, we had to write, I think, a 4-page essay about a saint, and we had to pull a name out of a hat. We had to pull a saint out of a hat. Talk about that for an improvisational game.
It was like on Saturday Night Live when they had Father Guido Sarducci.
Oh my Jesus Lord!
And he's like he had a game to find the Pope in the pizza.
Yeah, sort of similar to that.
Similar to that.
Pull the saint out of the hat. Pull the saint out of the hat.
Okay.
And I got St. Francis of Assisi.
St. Francis of Assisi.
So I was writing and I was just like, I can't bullshit my way through this. So I looked up a page about who St. Francis of Assisi was, copied everything, changed every third word, and handed it in.
There you go. And did it work?
I have no idea. I was still confirmed, so I'm assuming it worked.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, St. Finley of Assisi. So I think at that point, Vivian goes into the kitchen to make herself a fresh pot of coffee. So at this point, Arthur
he's getting
runs
angry.
His mouth.
Yeah. He's annoyed because the church wants to use the new social center
for wayward teenagers.
Wayward teenagers, yes. And he's saying,
Which, I mean, let's backtrack for 2 seconds. What church in this day and age is putting any kind of money into a rec room or a social hall for wayward teenagers, pregnant teenagers, children going through strife? Those don't exist.
No.
I do not know of any congregation that donates money to these social causes. The only social cause that these churches and these religious organizations donate to is themselves. And then they write it off on their taxes.
Yes, and they don't get taxed.
They don't get taxed.
They don't get taxed.
They don't get taxed.
I know. Ridiculous.
All I can say is tax the churches.
Even if they just tax Joel Osteen.
Oh my God. He could end world hunger.
Just think of just the top 10 evangelists.
He could end homelessness in this country.
I mean, please.
Oh, my God.
Please. All right. So...
I tell you what, though, that's one of the reasons why I can't go on TikTok. I love TikTok because of the random stuff that I find. But if I tell you, I have cultivated my For You page has been nothing but pro-BLM posts and, you know, the white Karens and political talk and religious talk. And I'm like, I'm so appreciative that I get to watch all of these things. But if I tell you, it is the single most aggravating thing to watch these things and just...
Yes, I'll be like watching and then I feel like my blood boiling and I'm like, I have to stop.
Exactly.
I can't watch anymore.
Because it infuriates you.
Yeah.
It infuriates you, especially because, like... Again, we have said this on a multitude of episodes. My family is like Fox News Republican conservative. And every time I watch something or read something or like educate myself to what's going on, I'm reminded that it all adds up to a hill of beans because the family that I live with doesn't pay any attention to that nonsense. They only pay attention to what Fox News tells them and Tucker Carlson tells them.
Of course they do. Yeah, speaking of TikTok, you know, I've been watching quite a few of atheist videos in TikTok, which I find very interesting.
Fascinating.
I forget who it is, but he does he takes like a lot of these callers.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, these people are always like, you know, well, have you tried getting on your knees and asking the Lord to like, and the one guy he's like, yes, he said, you know, I tried for 20 years. Every day I was on my knees praying, you know, asking for, you know, insight or something, a sign. And he said, and I never got anything. And, you know, and people, then, you know, you get people who are telling him like, well, you know, if you don't accept Jesus into your heart, you're going to burn in hell. And, you know, and he says to them, he goes, so he's like, so let me ask you, you believe yourself to be a good person, correct? And they're like, yes. And he said, and yet you think if I don't believe the same way as you, that I will suffer an eternity of damnation and burning in hellfire. He said, that's what you think is going to happen to me. He said, I don't think that of you just because you don't think the way I do. He said, so honestly, he said, you know, you're not a good person. You're not a good person if you think that's what's going to happen to me because I don't think the same way as you.
From what I've seen on social media and through, you know, the magic mirror that is my phone that will show me all of these things and whatnot, the most Christ-like people are not Catholic.
No.
The people that practice the most Christ-like mentalities are the ones that don't practice any or belong to any organized religion. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it fascinates me.
Well, to be honest, I really feel that I'm an atheist.
Yeah.
You know, to me, The Good Book, basically the same as Grimm's fairy tales to me. I always compared. That's how much faith I put into it.
I always compared the Bible to be an overemphasized, to be an overdramatic game of telephone.
One atheist, he described it as the sheep herder's guide to the universe. And I'm like,
yeah,
not wrong. Sheep herder's guide to the universe. That's what it is.
For a long time, I practice agnosticism, where I don't believe that one being created the universe. I believe in multiple creators. I believe in science. Not that I practice Scientology, because that is just that's an entire different can of worms.
Forget that.
But it's fascinating. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating to like read up on these things. And, you know, I read tarot cards. Mm-hmm. I whatchamacallit, I like burn sage periodically. Like, I'll engage in things that any Catholic worth their salt will be like, that is witchcraft, be gone even. Right. And it's like, what? Not for anything. There are times when, like, I will read a piece of text that is like, witchcraft in Catholicism, or paganism in Catholicism. Like, not for anything, most of the rituals that we practice for Easter and Christmas and Halloween
all came from pagan rituals.
All came from pagan rituals.
Yes.
So it's just it really is quite fascinating how
The whole thing about Jesus coming back from the dead, that's all based on the myth of that the pagans used to celebrate of like
resurrection.
The fertility god would in winter would go into would die and then would be reborn in the spring.
Yep.
That's what all that comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we have Easter eggs?
I have
the
no
egg
idea.
symbol of pagan symbol of fertility. That's why. Why do you think that all came from?
It's just, it really is. It's fascinating.
Well, everything about Christmas.
Everything about Christmas.
All that came from pagan holidays,
Santa and
pagan
Jesus.
rituals.
Santa and Jesus.
Yeah. So it was like the Christians, they were celebrating those pagan holidays so they didn't get killed, and but they incorporated it into like their own belief system.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
And the one thing I can say about all of this is that reading and education is so important. And I really feel like that's one of the reasons why a lot of these Republicans and a lot of these Republicans in Congress,
Republic clans,
where they try and and we're just two drag queens from Long Island. This ain't like
these are all just
our opinions. But it's just it is fascinating to see all of these Republicans trying to pass these laws about banning these books, getting rid of these educational things,
and now banning the drag queens.
Now banning drag queens in Tennessee. They just passed a bill
to protect the children. Well, last I've
seen, the pastors and the priests were the ones doing the diddling.
Exactly. When was the last time you saw a drag queen on To Catch a Predator?
So I posted something about a pastor that groomed this 14-year-old girl until she was 18, and then on the 18th birthday, so she turned 18. He proposed, and they got married. Now it's interesting because there was a gentleman that commented, whom I'm not friends with, and that's sometimes what happens when you make your posts public on Facebook. Anybody can comment on them.
Doing that.
So. So him and I start he sends me a long comment, and I read the whole thing. I read the whole thing, and then I commented saying, have you ever had a conversation with a drag queen? Have you ever had a conversation with someone other than what you decide is the norm? And I was very upfront. I was like, listen, I am more than happy to have a conversation with you. We can discuss it in the DMs. I have no problem opening myself up to the conversation that you want to have. Do you know he just said, I didn't want to read any of your vomit. And I'm like, well, okay, then I'm going to block you because you're not wanting to engage. You're not wanting to engage. You're not wanting to educate yourself, and you're not wanting to have a conversation. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I adore Sarah Silverman. Mm-hmm. Sarah Silverman hosted a show, I think it was on Hulu. I don't know if episodes are still available, where she, as a Jewish presenting female, would go to these Trump supporters and these very red areas. And she would just engage in conversation with these people. And she found out just how similar how similar all of them are, and how they're just looking out for so and so, they're looking out for so and so. We all want the same things. It's just these Republican congressmen and Fox News and the CNN, whichever, they're all trying to feed us a specific narrative.
Yeah.
So it's always, and again, I posted a catnip about this on my Instagram, basically saying education is so important. Read the instruction manual. Just read the instruction manual. You may learn something from reading that instruction manual.
Exactly.
So I am a firm proponent that education is important. Reading is fundamental. And that's all.
It's funny. Have you ever seen that guy who goes to the Trump rallies and he
interviews them?
Interviews them. And, he just asks them simple questions. And
it's terrifying.
I know.
Terrifying.
He was interviewing this one woman, and I think this was back when, and of course Hillary came up, and she was like, well, we could, you don't want a woman in charge because women we're too emotional, and we could start a war. And then he said to her, well, all the wars that have been started in this country were started by men. And then she was just like, silence.
Well,
It's like,
Well,
it's like as soon as you point out, like, give them, like, a fact that totally disputes what they've just said. They just, like, it's like the mind shuts down.
The mind shuts down
It's
because they don't know how to argue it.
Yeah.
They don't know how to argue it unless they have Fox News making those talking points.
Exactly.
Unless they had someone else making those talking points,
They
they
don't
are
know.
essentially useless.
Exactly, because they can't formulate
Their own thoughts.
Sad. Very sad.
Sad.
That's but that's the other thing.
Go ahead.
Our educational system, it does not.
It's I have so many opinions.
Encouraging kids to think critically, to think for themselves.
No,
you have to think like everybody else, be like everybody else, do like everybody else.
And you know what's funny? A lot of people will look at that and say, "Oh, well, it's just anti-socialism." What is anti-socialism but communism? Like following one word, one mind, not formulating a critical thought, not doing any like critical based, not answering critical based questions. Isn't that communism? Isn't that fascism?
I have also, like, when they're like, oh well that country, they all follow Sharia law, and we can't, we
invented Sharia law.
It's like, not like us, this country, but we want this country to be, we want everybody to be Christian. It's like, you just.
But again, and this episode also points out hypocrisy.
Yeah, the hypocrisy.
Points out hypocrisy.
You don't like another country where everybody has to, follow that one religion.
Yeah.
But you want this country.
Want this country to be
where everybody follows one religion.
Listen, we've had the conversation about the Christian missionaries that go overseas to like these undisclosed locations and getting killed by the natives.
Yes.
Like, what did you expect? What did you expect?
Lord.
So Arthur is continuing to spill the beans, saying how Walter really made a bundle getting appliances for the social halls and the rec rooms.
Right.
And, Maude then is incensed.
Yeah.
Because she finally put two and two together. Like, the only reason Walter is going to church more and more frequently is because he's making a dime off of it.
Yes.
Is because he's been making a very shiny dime off of it. So she goes on a tear, and, Arthur's like, darn it, let the cat out of the bag.
Yeah.
And, at this point, Maude goes into her ever so dramatic fashion. She goes to the top of the stairs saying, bless his ecclesiastical heart. And she kneels down, and as she's kneeling, Walter comes down the stairs. The camera pans to Walter, whose face just drops.
Yeah.
And, Maude is like, Walter, come kneel with me. Dear Lord, she starts praying, she starts praying.
Yes, we thank thee for the peace of mind you've given us. That's when I think she says to him, come kneel.
Come kneel with me.
We thank thee for the
making Walter a better person. And, she says to come kneel, please, just come kneel. She asked him twice, come kneel with me. So as he comes down to start praying with her, and then she says, dear Lord, we thank you for the $5,000 worth of merchandising on a community church.
That he unloaded.
He unloaded on a community church.
And
so at this point, Walter's like, well,
he's like, you're missing the point. It was quality goods, and I gave it to them for 20% off.
And Maude's like, oh, I could see it now. Jesus saves at Finley's Friendly Appliances.
And that's when we have our break.
Yes, that's when we have our break. And then when we come back from break, Maude is marching down the stairs, saying something to the effect of Charlton Heston cutting the ribbon.
Yeah. Yeah, she was. There was no way she was going to that dedication,
even if Charlton Heston was cutting the ribbon.
My mother had such a thing for Charlton Heston.
I mean, he had muscles. He was very pretty. I think the only time I saw Charlton Heston besides Planet of the Apes was in the Colbys.
Oh, okay.
He was Sable's husband, and then they got divorced.
Yes.
I love Sable Colby. I love Stephanie Beacham.
I
love Stephanie Beacham so much. That was it. I was initially going to name myself Sable Cat.
Oh, really?
I really. But when you started the whole drag thing, I was like, well, I mean, if Alexis could be Alexis like Alexis Carrington, even though she will claim that was not, she was Alexis before Alexis was Alexis. I was contemplating
she did cater the Last Supper. So, let's be fair now.
She did. She did cater.
She did cater
that. She catered the affair.
Mm-hmm. Provided the hookers.
She knew Mary Magdalene personally.
Personally, she got her started.
But Jesus says the Charlton Heston cutting the ribbon. Walter's like trying to come up with excuse after excuse after excuse, and Maude says tough tabernacle.
They had so many good
so many good one-liners,
like religious,
yes,
like one-liners in this one.
So even
heart, tough tabernacle.
So after that, Vivian's like, I agree with Maude. I think what Walter's doing is wrong. And then of course Maude says, "Shut up, Vivian."
And he's like, I'm on your side.
I'm on your side. And Maude's like, oh, force of habit. So, I think at that point...
and Walter's, he's insisting he's not doing anything wrong. She wants to know why he didn't tell her, and he's just like...
It slipped his mind. And of course, Maude says, slipped your mind? This from the man who can remember Sally Rand's chest measurements from the 1930s World Fair.
Right. And Arthur says, well, he has a good head for figures.
But then it gets even better, kids, because then Walter and Arthur are now saying how Vivian and Maude, being women, don't know good business.
Don't know good business, of course, yes.
Because naturally, that's just how it works back in the 70s. The men would say, oh, well, you women don't know these things.
Right. Well, it wasn't even until the 70s that a woman...
78.
Could, open a bank account in her own name.
78 was... I think that was one of the first pieces of legislation that Ruth Bader Ginsburg tried to fight to pass, was women being able to open their own checking accounts without the aid of a husband or a father figure.
Right. Yep. Ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Yeah, women have come a long way in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And here we are.
And there were those trying to reverse it.
Because it's all about control.
Yes.
That's the problem. It is always and will always be about control. Having control over a woman's bodily autonomy, having control over the gays, having control over the blacks, having controls over the minorities. I could go on.
Control.
That's all it is.
Yes.
It's all about control. And controlling the narrative. That's another reason why I hate Rupert Murdoch. He is always trying to control the narrative. So... Sally Rand's measurements from 1930s World Fair.
Right.
Sell $100,000 worth of merch. Oh, right, yes. After that, I think Arthur says, well, he's not only just going to make $5,000, there's going to be a whole slew of social holes
over churches all over the area.
Churches all over the area that Walter will be able to sell $100,000 worth of merchandise. So while Arthur is trying to assist, Walter is insisting, don't help.
Right. And I have about Arthur telling Maude that she just doesn't understand business. He even gets patients from the church.
Yep. I think, even before we go into that line, because that was a funny line, Maude says to Walter, if it were up to you, you'd be in hell selling an air conditioner to the devil.
Right.
And it would probably be a bigger unit than he needed.
Than he needs, yes.
So then at that point, it goes into the women don't understand business.
Yes.
And, yes, Arthur says, I even get a couple of kickbacks by being a Catholic because I'll have patients that I'll see in church. And it'll be a congregation. He gets patients from church.
Yes.
So he asks, name me one religious organization.
He bets her. He
bets her. I'll bet $10 that you can't name another religion that doesn't get business from other...
it has to do with getting, the congregants.
All right, so single doctor that doesn't make a few extra dollars off religion.
Right.
So Maude snatches it out of her hand and says, Christian Science. And the audience erupts with laughter, and we erupted with laughter. And
Arthur's furious because Maude got
the better of him.
And she took $10.
$10. And he gave a quarter at church. So $10 is a lot of quarters to Arthur.
Yes. And Arthur, he's storming out, and he's like, that he's angry that he lost this money that will
go into the next flu shot.
That will it's going to feed their whole family.
Yeah. And I think Vivian says, yes. Arthur, you can't feed a family on $10. They really picked and chose where they had Vivian be intelligent. Mm-hmm. But I mean, also, I earlier in the episode, I forgot to mention because I didn't write it down, and I just thought as we were going over that one scene, Arthur's annoyed because the social hall is going to be a rec room for teenagers and
we
pregnancies and whatnot. But Vivian turns to him and goes, "Well, Arthur, you really had nothing else to say. You only gave a quarter."
Right.
Well, because he said, I gave my 2 cents to the pastor.
That's right.
And Vivian says, "Well, you didn't
we
put
forgot
2
to
cents
mention the main reason for not wanting the wayward teens there was because they would break the Coke machine.
They'd break the Coke machine. The only reason. That's it.
Just because they'd break the Coke machine.
Just because they'd break the Coke machine.
So Arthur, he wants to storm out with Vivian in tow.
Yes.
And he tells you had said he told Maude he was adding that Maude adding that $10 to her next flu shot. So
So when I did Maude Live, my Arthur Harmon will periodically, through no fault of his own, will call me Maude.
Uh-huh.
He will call me Maude. Whether we're in a rehearsal for the podcast that we're doing, or we're just bullshitting back and forth, he will call me Maude. Mm-hmm. And even my cousin's wife, my cousin Danielle, her wife Jamie's father will call me Maude. And there are even commenters. Uh-huh. There are people that will comment on the video saying, "Oh my God, it sounds like B. Arthur is like talking to Toni Homeperm," and I'm just like, "Oh, okay."
I know. Yeah.
All right. Sure. I'll take it. I'll take it.
It's very true.
So, Walter's still trying to, appease to Maude's.
And he tells her, he said, initially he did join for the business, but now he likes it.
Yeah,
and
Maude says something about Gidget Goes Hawaiian.
She was like, Gidget Goes Hawaiian too.
Yeah, the last time you said that was when we went to go see Gidget Goes Hawaiian.
Right. So Walter is trying to find that he's gonna go by himself.
Yep. And then Philip comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So Philip comes in, and they have this really interesting bit of dialogue where
actually I think Mrs. Naugatuck came in first.
Right. Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Naugatuck came in, and
she's back from church, but I don't think they got to.
They didn't get to the church because
her and Bert had a tiff.
They did. They had a tiff.
He tried to convert her in his convertible.
Yes.
She got suspicious
when he said to stop at a motel for a Bible. And that's also, I have what I've written down, when Maude is like, honesty, integrity, and good faith, because Walter was like, I'm leaving this money for Carol and you and Philip's children and his children's children. Right. So Maude says, if you want to leave a legacy for your grandchildren, why don't you do one of honesty, integrity, and good faith?
Right, right.
At that point, Walter says, honesty, integrity, and good faith. Boy, you women know nothing about religion.
Yes.
Nothing about business.
Business. And of course, that's when we go through the thing with Mrs.
Naugatuck. Stop at a motel for a Bible. So then she leaves, and then Walter...
She goes into the kitchen.
She goes into the kitchen, and Walter turns to Maude and goes, can I change your mind about going to the dedication? And Maude says, if you're talking about the dedication, absolutely not. But if you're talking about the motel, never on Sunday.
Never on a Sunday. Never
so
on a Sunday.
Then Philip comes in.
Then Philip comes in. He's playing basketball, and we can see he's had a little bit.
Shut up a little bit. Shut up a little bit. He did.
Yes, and he's bouncing his basketball.
Bouncing the basketball, and he was excited because he's going to be going with his mother and his grandmother and his grandfather to the whatchamacallit, to the dedication.
And he says something like he asks Walter. He said, "Why are you so interested in church?"
Yep.
And Maude points out he's got
tell him Walter, tell him all 5,000 reasons. So, Walter pauses, and, he comes up with an excuse, and then Philip says, oh, good, who wants to hear all 5,000 reasons? So he scurries off to the kitchen, and, Walter then turns it on Maude, saying, why don't you tell him why you're not going to the dedication, Maude? And he says, Maude says, I'm going to tell him the truth, that his grandfather is a hypocrite.
Mm-hmm. And he's only doing it for the money.
For the money. So I think at that point, Philip
came
comes back in
in
without the basketball.
Right.
And
Walter's like,
throws Maude directly under the bus.
Yeah, he's like, tell Philip why you're not going. And so Philip's like, well, why not, Grandma?
Mm-hmm.
And
Maude reaches into her golden bag of wisdom,
and she's like, try to understand. And then she, because they've made this whole thing that they're all going.
It's a family affair.
Carol and Walter and Arthur and Vivian, and they're all going tonight. And it's like it's a party. It's a family thing. And now all of a sudden, Maude's not going. So Philip's like, Grandma, why aren't you going? It doesn't make any sense to him.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, your grandfather. And
the camera pans to Walter and then back to Maude.
And she can't
lie.
Bring herself. Well, she can't bring herself to tell the truth.
Yeah, she cannot bring herself to tell the truth to Philip, because it'll hurt Walter, it'll hurt Philip, and probably I think Maude just assumed that it wouldn't be in her best interest to tell the truth.
So she decides. She tells him,
because
your grandfather doesn't like my
hair,
but I'm going anyway. That's when Mrs. Dog
comes in with her Dutch oven.
With the basketball in
it. Saying, I just have one question. What bird laid this egg?
And then we cut to
commercial, and then we come back.
We're at the dedication
party, and everyone's having a good time.
And Maude is telling Walter he's so glad that she decided to come.
And Maude says, "Not 1/5000th as happy as you are, Walter."
Right. And he's like, "Cut it out, Maude."
Mm-hmm.
And that's when Reverend Wilson, who was the aforementioned, what was the actor's name again?
Graham Jarvis.
Graham Jarvis.
Graham Jarvis.
Yes. And, they're doing little introductions, and they're like, nice to meet you. And he tells Maude, nice to see you awake.
Nice to see you awake. Because Walter brings Maude over to the Reverend.
Right.
And says, I'd really like you to meet my wife. And, Maude initially was just like, oh, it's so nice to see you. And it was such a wonderful sermon.
Right.
Obviously,
Yeah, she slept through it. So that's when the Reverend, he goes like to the middle of the
if
the
Mrs.
room.
Something or other would put a bulb in her brownie.
Yeah, she's like, attention, please.
Getting everybody's attention so that
this is a special day.
Yep.
And we want to single out one, new member. And he says, Walter Findlay, please come up.
Yep.
That's when he tells whoever it was to check for she had a bulb in her
brownie.
The brownie is being
it's a camera.
It's a
camera.
Back in the days. Literally, we had these little cameras, and you had a disposable flash bulb.
Yeah.
It was like a little square, and so you only got 4 flashes, and then it was
done.
It was done. You threw it away.
Talk about waste.
I know. Really.
Talk about waste.
Okay, so the Reverend he's presenting Walter with a check for $5,000 for the appliances that
Walter provided from Finley's Friendly Appliances.
And Walter, he says
something he really shouldn't have.
Prophetically, yeah.
He said, "Gee, I really shouldn't be taking this home.
I shouldn't be accepting
this money." So the Reverend goes, "Do you really mean that?" Yeah. And of course, Walter, not being able to go back on his word at all, is completely and totally cut off. And the Reverend goes, "You will not regret this, folks. Mr. Findlay has donated $5,000 to the church." The Reverend tears up the check, tosses it in the air, and as if on cue, Maude starts a chorus of "For he's a jolly good fellow." So everyone starts singing, and the camera zooms in to Walter and Maude is just cackling away. And
Walter says to her, he was like, "Maude, what about my money?"
And then, Maude says, "Honey, you'll get your reward in heaven." And, Walter then says, "What good is money in heaven?" And Maude says, "No good, Walter. That's the hell of it." I do love comeuppance. Comeuppance is wonderful.
It was. Oh, that was. It was really good. Really well thought out.
Really well thought out
episode, and they had some great one-liners.
Great one-liners.
You know, it was.
It was definitely
really
one of the better episodes of season
Definitely.
3. Definitely one of the better episodes of season 3.
Because it really just presented Maude as at her best.
Yeah,
That was Maude at her
best.
Because it's like, you know, it was. And a very good episode because it's such a
controversial
topic. I mean, anytime you talk about religion,
you have to handle it with kid gloves.
You're gonna like get somebody is gonna be
someone's
pissed
pennies
off.
are gonna be in a bunch.
But I think they did it in such a way that, you know, I think you can watch it and.
And I mean, it really had all different types of religions from a white perspective.
Yeah,
you know, Maude is presumably atheist / agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Walter is also like a non-practicing Catholic Christian.
Mm-hmm.
You have Arthur Harmon, who's the typical white Christian. You know, by today's standards, would be considered a Republic Klan member.
right.
And then you have Vivian, who just follows and tags along with her husband. But then you also have Bert Beasley, who's Church of England.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see more than one religion brought about into the fold. Which is, you know, it's another thing that fascinates the hell out of me. So many people complain about Biden, and it's like, I remember reading, someone was complaining that he had ash on his head.
Yeah.
It was Ash Wednesday. They will always find something to complain about. They will always find something to complain about.
Really? I guess. What can you do?
Nothing. We can end the episode is what we could do.
I know. I don't know how long this one went.
Hour 10.
Oh.
Hour 10.
Fair.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot to...
there was a lot to discuss.
There's a lot to discuss.
But... we thank you so much for joining us. If you would like to follow me, you can follow me at that Tomcat on all forms of social media. I try and post weekly on my socials with my Instagram and my YouTube and my Facebook and my LinkedIn and my God knows what else and my
Lord.
TikTok. I'm posting all over the goddamn joint.
I need a link tree.
Yes, you should get a link tree.
Do you have a link tree?
I do.
I need a link tree.
I do have a link tree.
I'm messaging Stella right now.
Yes,
I need a
get her
link
right
tree.
on that.
Get on it.
I need a link tree. Crack the
Hop
whip
on
it. But yes, you can find me at that Tomcat. Where can they find you?
Oh, everywhere. Toni Homeperm, and of course it's Tony
with an I.
With an I.
Tony with an I.
Tony with an I, and that's Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and of course they should also be following God Will Get You for That Walter.
They should be following God Will Get You for That Walter on Facebook and Instagram.
YouTube. Instagram is, of course,
Finley's Friendly Appliances.
And, of course, our newest venture, the Dorothy
and Sophia Show. Oh, my Jesus, Lord above.
Which they can follow on Facebook at the Dorothy and Sophia Show.
Dorothy and Sophia Show on YouTube.
On
Dorothy
Instagram.
Sophia 1985 on Instagram.
Yes.
Dorothy Sophia 1985 on YouTube. And I think that's it right now. We have an Instagram, a Facebook, and a YouTube.
Which is enough for now.
I think that's enough for now.
It's good enough for now.
Good enough for government work.
Who knows?
Maybe we'll get ourselves a TikTok.
Of course, it's also Dorothy and Sophia 1985 at Gmail.
At gmail.com if you would like to email us for private events and so on and so forth, because let me tell you something, kids, and this is not me being braggadocious. When we're Dorothy and Sophia, we're good.
We are good.
We're good.
We are good.
Like, I don't mean that to be, braggadocious or anything, but like even like patrons of ours come up to us and saying, that one woman who came up to us at Shabby Tab said, "It's uncanny."
I know.
It's uncanny. I said, "Yes, I know it is. I apologize, but that's just how it worked."
I know. Well,
So-
I mean, not just what we're, what we do with a shtick is just
It's so
good.
funny. It's so good.
But also, out of all the like impersonators I've seen, I mean, we really have the physicality because you're so
I'm so
tall,
much taller
and
than
I'm so
Tony
short.
is.
So when you see us as Dorothy and
I'm
Sophia,
6'4" in my stocking feet, and Tony is
I'm only 5'2".
5'0".
Because
glory.
I've seen, I won't name names, but I've seen like some Dorothy and Sophia's that they're like basically the same height, and it's just
We've seen some Dorothy and Sophia's where the Dorothy needs to her lifts.
It loses something in translation when the Dorothy
does.
and Sophia are like the same size.
It does, because I mean, B was 5'9", which I mean by today's standards would be considered an average height for a woman.
That's a little tall.
And Estelle Getty, I think, was either 5 foot
Or 4'9",
or 4'11",
4'11",
or
something like that.
4'11",
Which pretty much corresponds to the difference
in size between the two of us.
It really does. It's the same. I think it's about the same correlation.
Yep. And I mean, just when you see pictures of us in drag, Tony is still significantly shorter than I.
Still shorter. Even in my highest heels and
even in
flats.
your highest heels and me in flats.
And even with my highest hair.
Oh my goodness!
I know.
But we have fun. I will say this: the chemistry between the two of us is good.
Oh,
the chemistry between the two of us is good. We tear each other apart.
It is sickening. It truly is.
I will say this, though. There were a couple of lines that you gave me yesterday at Pine Grove. I was just like, that actually really hurt. But I mean, I'll take it because it's funny. It is funny.
But it comes from a
place
of
love.
It's all from a place of love.
That
knife you feel in your back, it's coming from a place of love.
And when you take the knife out of my bag, you can plunge it into my heart.
Exactly.
Plunge it into my heart. We thank you so much for listening, and you will hear us next week, as always, on another episode of God'll Get You for That, Walter. Good night, guys.
Bye-bye.